The stage lights of America's Got Talent 2025 illuminated the vast auditorium as the announcer's voice faded and the audience settled into an expectant hush. From the side entrance, two young Filipino contestants stepped onto the stage, one slightly taller, the other clutching a worn microphone with both hands. Their clothes were clean but modest, simple shirts neatly tucked in, shoes that had clearly seen better days, and expressions that revealed a mix of awe and quiet determination. They paused at center stage, standing close together as though drawing strength from each other's presence. The crowd noticed their uncertainty, no flashy wardrobe, no dramatic entrance, just two humble faces carrying something deeper than performance ambition. The judges glanced at one another with curiosity. Sophia tilted her head with a gentle smile, Heidi folded her hands in interest, and Howie leaned forward, studying them. Simon Cowell, known for his sharp eye, watched quietly, his expression unreadable but attentive. When asked to introduce themselves, the taller boy spoke first, his voice soft and accented. He said his name was Gabriel, and beside him was his cousin Amara, both from a small coastal town in the Philippines. The microphone trembled slightly in his hand as he spoke, but his words were respectful and steady. Amara added only a quiet greeting, her eyes darting between the judges and the vast audience. There was no dramatic music, no theatrical build-up. Yet the silence in the room carried weight. Their posture, the simplicity of their appearance, and the careful way they held themselves suggested a life shaped more by hardship than rehearsal studios or stage schools. The audience leaned in, not because of fame or spectacle, but because something about the pair already felt like a story worth hearing. As the applause from their brief introduction faded, Sophia gently asked how long they had been singing together. Gabriel glanced at Amara, then back at the judges. He explained that they began singing as children in their local church, but only recently started performing as a duet after everything changed. His voice softened on those last words, and the audience sensed there was more behind them. Simon, noticing the tension in their faces, leaned forward slightly and asked, "What do you mean by everything changed?" Gabriel hesitated, the microphone lowered for a moment as he gathered himself. Amara placed a supportive hand over his, giving him silent assurance. Taking a quiet breath, Gabriel lifted the mic again and spoke. He explained that a powerful typhoon had struck their province the previous year. Their homes were destroyed, and many families, including their own, lost almost everything. He described muddy water rising through the streets, roofs torn away in the night, and entire neighborhoods washed out by relentless winds and floods. The auditorium remained utterly silent. Amara, who had barely spoken before, added a few quiet words. She said their family survived by clinging to the beams of a neighbor's collapsed house. In the weeks that followed, they slept on school floors and in crowded evacuation shelters, where they sang to distract frightened children and comfort grieving elders. Her voice trembled, and she paused to compose herself. The audience's expressions shifted, sympathy, sadness, and astonishment all at once. A woman in the third row held a hand over her mouth, while a man beside her wiped at his eyes. Heidi reached for a tissue. Even Simon's usual composure softened, his eyes steady but noticeably affected. There was no need for further explanation. In that moment, everyone understood, they were not just contestants, they were survivors carrying their story in song. After a respectful silence, Simon gave a small nod and said gently, "Whenever you're ready." Gabriel and Amara exchanged a quiet look, one part courage, one part unspoken memory. The stage lights softened to a warm amber glow as they stepped closer to the center, sharing a single microphone stand. A hush fell over the auditorium. Even the distant rustling of the crowd seemed to fade. The backing track had not yet begun, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like time had paused. Gabriel closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, then gave a subtle signal to the sound technician. A soft piano melody drifted from the speakers, delicate, slow, and filled with longing. The audience instantly felt the tone shift. Gabriel began the first line, his voice rich yet restrained, each note trembling with emotion he did not attempt to hide. It wasn't a performance polished by studios or vocal coaches, this was something more organic, shaped by sorrow and survival. When Amara joined in on the second verse, her voice rose gently beneath his, forming a harmony that was hauntingly pure. She sang with closed eyes, holding the microphone lightly as if delicately cradling the story inside the song. The blend of their voices created an unexpected stillness in the auditorium, no whispers, no coughs, no shifting seats. Camera operators instinctively zoomed in on their faces. Tears shimmered in Amara's eyes as she held a note that hung in the air with aching clarity. Gabriel followed with quiet strength, his expression calm but deeply emotional. By the time they reached the chorus, their voices joined fully, filling the vast space with a sound both fragile and powerful. The lyrics spoke of hope rising after darkness, of rebuilding what was lost, and of carrying the memories of those who could not stay. Their duet was not loud or showy, yet every word carried a weight that silenced the room. As the song moved into its final chorus, the atmosphere in the auditorium transformed into something almost sacred. Gabriel's voice carried the melody upward with restrained strength, while Amara's softer harmony wove through his like a quiet prayer. The music was gentle, but its impact was overwhelming, each note seemed to reach into the hearts of everyone listening. A woman in the front row clasped her hands together tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks without her even wiping them away. A father seated with his young daughter leaned forward, his expression pained but mesmerized. Even the ushers at the back, usually focused on crowd movement, stood still and listened. Near the judges' table, Heidi pressed a hand against her heart, her eyes glassy with emotion. Sophia wiped a tear discreetly with the edge of a tissue but didn't bother pretending she wasn't moved. Howie, normally quick with commentary or humor, sat wordlessly, blinking a few times as if trying to steady himself. The cameras captured each quiet reaction, the shimmer of tears, the stunned silence, the reverent awe. There were no phones glowing in the air, no murmured conversations, no distracted glances. The entire room had collectively surrendered to the performance. Then, the final line came, sung in perfect harmony, soft and sincere. The last note lingered briefly before dissolving into silence. For several heartbeats, no one moved. It wasn't hesitation, it was reverence. Finally, a young girl in the middle row stood, clapping with trembling hands. Others followed hesitantly at first, then all at once. A rising wave of applause swept the room, growing louder and louder until it became a thunderous ovation. People rose from their seats, not out of routine politeness, but from genuine admiration and awe. Gabriel and Amara lowered their gaze humbly, overwhelmed, unsure whether to smile or simply breathe. The standing ovation thundered through the auditorium, echoing off every wall. Gabriel and Amara stood motionless at center stage, eyes downcast, overwhelmed by the eruption of applause. Amara covered her mouth with both hands, unsure whether to cry or bow. Gabriel blinked rapidly, visibly holding back tears. After several long moments, the clapping slowly quieted. Even as people sat down again, many continued dabbing at their eyes or shaking their heads in disbelief. The judges, still visibly moved, took a breath before speaking. Heidi leaned toward her microphone first, her voice soft. That was more than a performance. It was a gift. Thank you. She paused to compose herself, cheeks still damp. Sophia followed, her tone gentle and maternal. You didn't just sing, you carried your story in every note. And we felt it. Howie cleared his throat, clearly emotional. I've been here a long time, and it's rare to see an audience silenced like that, not because they're unsure, but because they're in awe. Then all eyes turned to Simon. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he sat with his hands clasped, looking at the two young singers with an expression far softer than his usual demeanor. When he finally leaned into the microphone, his voice was calm and unusually quiet. I've judged thousands of performances, he said, but what you just did, that wasn't just singing. That was survival turned into art. He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. You didn't ask for pity. You didn't rely on sympathy. You stood here and let the world feel your truth. The audience was silent again, hanging on every word. Simon exhaled and added, "And I'll be honest, you moved me in a way I didn't expect. This is the kind of moment I'll remember for a very long time." Without waiting for the others, he pressed the golden buzzer. The crowd exploded with cheers.